you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you gotta be honest.
Are you prepared now to say you're going to govern as a progressive and enact programs in the mold of Sanders and Warren? And if so, what does that say to either moderate Democrats or independents or even some Republicans dissatisfied with President Trump?
I'm prepared to say that I have a record of over 40 years and that I'm going to beat Joe Biden. Look at my record.
It's obvious there that YouTube used an appeal to authority with Snopes as the authority to say that it was a lie to intimate that Joe Biden saying he was going to beat Joe Biden was not true, that he didn't say it, when in fact he did. He said, I will beat Joe Biden, so maybe not exactly what he said. This is a case of Greta Van Susteren remembering an event much differently than reality remembers the event. First Greta, then reality.
Something to say for the record. Some of us, well, we're a little semi-romantic about our jobs when we were teenagers, even if not particularly glamorous jobs. My first paid job was in the back room of a dairy in Appleton, Wisconsin, where for hours each day I sorted and counted pennies, nickels, and dimes and then put them in those paper sleeves to be delivered to the bank. Glamorous? Nope. Which brings me to this. Check out this honor. Former Vice President Joe Biden today in Wilmington, Delaware, at the public swimming pool where many moons ago Biden worked as a lifeguard. The pool has now been renamed the Joseph R. Biden Jr. Aquatic Center. And it was back in 1962 when a then teenage Biden was the only white lifeguard at the inner city pool. He says he wanted to work there to get more involved and credits that summer job with teaching him a lot about race relations. Congratulations to Vice President Biden. And while being Vice President of the United States is a big deal, I know this honor, having the pool named after him, might even mean more to him. He's just that kind of guy. He knows what matters, and he never forgets where he came from or his family.
This has one cut in it because I stopped when I thought he was done, but he says, oh, I got another story to tell you, and he starts to go on about how black people couldn't vote at a time when they could. So that said, the reason I'm doing it is so that you can see this in its entirety, and you can judge for yourself if this is the ramblings of a madman, a coherent speech, somewhere in between, what Greta Van Susteren remembered, or do you in history remember it a little bit differently?
I wanted to get more involved, and I realized I lived in a neighborhood where I'd turn on the television and I'd see and listen to Dr. King and others, but I didn't know any black people. No, I really didn't. You didn't know any white people either. That's the truth. So I wanted to work here. And there's my daughter, Ashley. Come on up here, Ash. And so what I did was I came down and I applied to the city of Wilmington for a job, and I was the only white employee here. And I learned so much. I learned so much. I learned that folks that I work with, like Spencer Henry and Lafayette Jackson and a whole range of people, Jamie Rolls, a lot of great, great, great people were my fellow lifeguards. There were 13 of us. I learned that they treated me. They treated me as an equal. We used to go in what was not as modern as that. We used to go in the key room at lunchtime after a free swim and sit on the floor because it was nice and cool. And remember Boom Boom Cannon and a few other guys that worked here as well. And we sit there and we talk, and they'd ask me questions because I really was the only white guy they really knew. And they'd ask me questions about everything, I mean, things that just startled me. I remember one time, I won't mention which lifeguard, said, "Do I have a jerry can, a 5-gallon can for gasoline?" And I said, "No, I don't." I said, "But what do you need it for?" He said, we're going down to see my grandmama in North Carolina. We can't stop at most gas stations. They won't let us stop at most gas stations. I learned a lot. And I learned that it makes a difference. This was the diving board area, and I was one of the guards, and there was a 3-meter board. And if you fell off sideways, you landed on the darn cement over there. And Corn Pop was a bad dude, and he ran a bunch of bad boys. And I did, and back in those days, to show how things have changed, one of the things you had to use, if you used pomade in your hair, you had to wear a bathing cap. And so he was up on the board, wouldn't listen to me. I said, "Hey, Esther, you, off the board, or I'll come up and drag you off." Well, he came off, and he said, "I'll meet you outside." My car, these were all public housing behind it. My car, there was a gate out here. I parked my car outside the gate. And he said, "I'll be waiting for you." He was waiting for 3 guys in straight razors. Not a joke. There was a guy named Bill Wright, Mouse, the only white guy, and he did all the pools. He was the mechanic. And I said, "What am I going to do?" He said, "Come down here in the basement where all the pool filter is. You know the chain, there used to be a chain that went across the deep end. And he cut off a 6-foot length of chain. He folded up, he said, "You walk out with that chain. And you walk to the car and say, 'You may cut me, man, but I'm going to wrap this chain around your head.'" I said, "You kidding me?" He said, "No, if you don't come back." And he was right. So I walked out with the chain. And I walked up to my car. And they had, in those days, you used to remember the straight razor. You'd bang them on the curb, get them rusty, put them in a rain barrel, get them rusty. And I looked at him, but I was smart then. I said, "First of all," I said, "when I tell you get off the board, you get off the board, and I'll kick you out again, but I shouldn't have called you Esther Williams. I apologize for that. I apologize, but I didn't know that apology was going to work." He said, "You apologize to me?" I said, "I apologize for that, not for throwing you out, but I apologize for what I said." He said, "Okay," closed the straight razor, and my heart began to beat again. I came down here because I remember the first bumper sticker I saw that made me aware when I was in law school. "Proudly for Holloway. Proudly for your dad. First African-American state senator in the state of Delaware." Everything about. And by the way, you know, I sit on the stand and it get hot. I got hairy legs that turn blonde in the sun. And the kids used to come up and reach in the pool and rub my leg down so it was straight, and then watch the hair come back up again. They'd look at it. So I learned about roaches. I learned about kids jumping on my lap. And I've loved kids jumping on my lap. And I tell you what, the men, they're now all men, the guys I work with down here, and they're all guys at the time, they're all good men. Most of them made an awful lot of themselves. And Earl Larkin had a rough time. And some of you knew Earl. I came back as a public defender. I came back to Delaware and I got a fancy job with the oldest law firm in the state. But the city was burning. It was burning down here. And I couldn't do it. So I quit and became a public defender. And the first trial I had, I walked into court as a public defender, with another guy named Eddie Sobocinski, a defender. I'd only been admitted to the bar 1 week, and Earl Larkin was in chains around his ankles and on his wrist, and they were chained together, so on a belt. And he said, "Who's going to try the Larkin case?" I just got started. And he was aptly named. His name was Judge Stiftel. And he said, Sobocinski said, "Well, that's my colleague. He just joined the public defender's office." He said, will you in fact defend him?" So he turned to Larkin and said, "He'll defend you." I said, whoa, Your Honor. I know nothing about the case. He said, "I'll give you till tomorrow, but you draw the jury today." And he looked at Larkin, he said, "You mind if he represents you?" And I never forget what he said. I learned a lot. He said, and I mean it sincerely. He looked at me and he said, "One hunky's just as bad as any other. I'll take whoever you send me." And here's what I want to tell you about Earl. Here's what I want to tell you about the neighborhood and the heart. I defended him. He got beat up right on the other side of the field here. He walked along the tracks. He was a sailor in a sailor's uniform, the guy who he beat up and robbed. And so I thought he was innocent. I kept the jury out 5 hours, but they convicted him. And I felt so bad. So I go down to the old prison all the time. They had little wooden tables and two little chairs in a big dome you'd sit under where you'd be interviewed. And I was sitting there, Councilwoman, and the third time, saying, "I'm appealing this case." And finally, he took the table, he flipped it up, and he said, jumped up, and the guards came and grabbed him. He said, "Don't you understand, Joe? I did it. I did it." But here's the point. He cared about me. This is a man who saw me bleeding because I saw this guy going to jail and I thought he was innocent. There's character, even in great problems. There's so much character in this neighborhood. There was so much character back then, too. So many people didn't get a shot. So many people didn't get a shot who could be standing right where Lisa's standing today, a lot earlier, could be standing where I'm standing today. Let me end by saying, I was a pretty darn good lifeguard. Yeah, man. I taught swimming, too. And I remember going over, we used to play the other pools, and we played basketball at lunchtime, remember? We went over to Riverside, we played, and someone on the other team threw the ball to me by accident. And they looked at me and said, "Oh, God, I thought you were on my team." I'm thinking, I'm the only white boy within 20 miles. Remember, I'd get invited down to Baby Grand. I walk in and say, "Who's this guy?" And they say, "He's ours. He's ours." You've always had my back. The neighborhood's always had my back. And God willing, I've always had your back. And I'll always have it as long as I'm around. I love you. It's a great honor. Thank you very much. And if I were still a lifeguard, I'd say, time to get in the pool. Thanks, everybody. And Councilwoman, thank you so much for this honor. Thank you. So how you guys doing? Who here is going to be president someday? Raise your hand. All right. I'll tell you one more story on their way out. You know what? There was a guy, when I first started, black folks weren't even allowed to vote very easily. That's how long ago it was. And guess what I got to do? 8 years ago, I got to be in the Wilmington train station, looking over the 3rd Street Bridge that had been burned to the ground, most of it, thinking nothing was ever going to get any better 40 years ago, waiting for a black man to pick me up, to take me 124 miles to be sworn in as President and Vice President of the United States. That's progress. We can make more. God love you all. What's your name?
Please clarify specifically, have you taken a cognitive
No,
test?
I haven't taken the test. Why the hell would I take a test? Come on, man. That's like saying you, before you got in this program, you take a test where you're taking cocaine or not. What do you think, huh? Are you a junkie?
What do you say to President Trump, who brags about his test and makes your mental state an issue for voters?
Well, if he can't figure out the difference between an elephant and a lion, I don't know what the hell he's talking about. Did you watch that? Look, come on, man. I know you're trying to goad me, but I mean, I'm so forward looking to have an opportunity to sit with the president or stand with the president in debates. Look, tomorrow's Superstar Tuesday, and I want to thank you all. I tell you what, I'm rushing ahead, aren't I? And I want to speak directly to Democrats here in Texas. They don't call Super Tuesday for nothing. By the way, this is my little sister, Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh, no, this is not. Oh, you switched on me. This is my wife. This is my sister. They switched on me. Self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing. 8 more years of Donald Trump will change America in a fundamental way.
8 more years! I think the president would love that. But it wasn't sleepy Joe Biden's only stumble, not by a long way.
My plan makes the limit of copay to be $1,000 because we further support the ability to buy into the Obamacare plan. The biopharma is now where things are going to go. It's no longer chemicals. It's about all these breakthroughs we have with dealing with the whole immune system. Finally activated the National Guard. Now we need the armed forces and the National Guard to help with hospital capacity, supplies, and logistics. We need to activate the Reserve Corps of doctors and nurses and beef up the number of responders dealing with these crush of cases. And in addition to that, we have to make sure that we are in a position that we are. Well, let me go to the second thing. Rich Fitzgerald, the county executive, Allegheny County executive, for being here, and all my time in public life from since I've gotten involved. The country wasn't built by Wall Street bankers, CEOs, and hedge fund managers. If the enterprise hit hard times, everybody took a hit. Union workers, the UAW took incredible cuts in their future and their pensions and the less to get GM working.
You were doing anything wrong.
You said I set up my son to work in an oil company. Isn't that what you said? Get your words straight, Jack.
That's what I hear on MSNBC.
You don't hear that in MSNBC. You did not hear that at all. What you heard, look, okay, I'm not going to get in an argument with you, man. Well, yeah, you do, but look, Fat, look, here's the deal. Here's the deal. Now, shush. I support the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment, just like right now, if you yell fire, that's not free speech. From the very beginning, I have a shotgun, I have a 20 gauge, a 12 gauge, my son's hunt. Guess what? You're not allowed to own any weapons. I'm not taking your gun away at all. You need 100 rounds.
You were a veto when you said you were going to take our guns.
I did not say that. That's not true. I did not say that. It's a viral video like the other ones are putting out there. They're saying they're lying.
Your voice, you said that you're taking the guns.
Oh, he disqualified it. Wait. Take your AR-14s and what?
Okay, this is not okay.
Hold on. Hey, let's
There's
a lot of guys. Want to.
I'm not worried.
So much.
Give me a break, man. Don't be
You're
worried
switching
about
up on me.
Hey, there's a lot of.
Hey, look, here's the deal. Here's the deal. Are you able to own a machine gun?
I own a machine
I said, are you able to own one?
Machine gun training?
That's right. So AR-15's illegal.
How is that a machine gun?
No, it's not.
Semi-automatic.
Yeah, do you need 100 rounds? Do you need 100 rounds?
In America with handguns, and there are what you call assault rifles. Why are you advocating for assault rifles when you go right handguns?
So you're arguably the candidate with the greatest advantage in this race. You've been the vice president. You weren't burdened down by the impeachment trials. In the participation. So how do you explain the performance in Iowa, and why should the voters believe that you can win the national election?
It's a good question. Number one, Iowa's a Democratic caucus. You ever been to a caucus? No, you haven't. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but Now you got to be honest.
You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. You said you were, but now you got to be honest.
I'm going to be honest with you. It was a little bit confusing in Iowa.
I'm Donald Trump, and I approve this message.